And it's the hotspot.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. We are honored to have Denise Calderon here to lead our webinar today. Denise is an active member in our community and our chamber. She has a stellar reputation. In fact, she has won the Best of South Lake Business Awards in the Best CPA and Accountant category for the past 4 years. Denise works hard to stay up to date on all tax changes as they happen and passes the information along to her clients and followers in understandable terms, just as she will do today in our webinar. She and her staff are very responsive to questions, whether about personal taxes or business taxes, and lately to questions about PPP and EIDL. If you have questions or you need help with taxes or business accounting, you'll be in great hands with Denise. And then just a quick housekeeping thing before we get started as well. We do have the question and answer button located at the bottom of your screen. So if you have any questions, please go ahead and put those in there. And Denise is going to stop at certain points during the presentation to go ahead and answer those. So without further ado, go ahead, Denise.
Thank you, Amanda. And hello, everyone, and thank you for attending our webinar. The information that we're going to go over is very detailed. We hope this information will be helpful, and we will open up, as she said, to questions after each topic. We provided a PowerPoint for you to follow along and make notes. This recording will be available for you to look back on if you need to review any of the material or pass it on to others who may find this information useful as well. You know, we are an accounting firm, but we do not just work with numbers, we work with people, and we care about our small businesses owners, and that's why we wanted to present this information to you and to give you the opportunity to get the answers to questions you may have. So let's start with the economic impact payments. Hit it again. You know, the IRS announced that tax season will officially begin on February 12th to allow the IRS to update their system following the December 27th tax law changes. Because, you know, the economic impact payments was an advance on a 2020 tax credit, and they were based on your 2018 and 2019 tax returns. Individuals could have received up to $1,200 in 2020 or $600 in 2021. Now, if you receive too much of the stimulus, the IRS announced that there is no provision in the law requiring repayment. For example, if your income for 2018 and 19 was lower than your 2020, you will not have to repay back anything. And, or say you have a child in 2020 that's turning 17 and you receive the extra 600, you do not have to repay that either. So that's really good news that we hear about that. If you did not receive the correct amount or nothing at all, the first step is to go to Get My Payments to check the status of your first and second economic impact payment. You will see either payment status. If you receive that message, a payment has been processed. The status will include your payment date and tell you how your payment was processed, either by direct deposit or by mail. The payment status not available or need more information. If you receive this message, you were either not eligible or you're eligible, but the IRS was unable to issue a payment. Now you will be able to claim a recovery rebate credit on your 2020 tax return if you get these two messages. But in order to claim the full amount of the recovery rebate credit, you will need to know the amount of the economic impact payment that you did receive. As I told my clients last year, you should have kept, and hopefully you did, the notice that you received regarding your payment amount. This is part of your 2020 tax records. If you did not keep this letter, you can go to the irs.gov/account to view the amounts you received. If the IRS stated that they issued you a direct deposit, but you did not receive it, you can request a payment trace from the IRS by calling this number, 1-800-919-9835, or faxing form 3911, which you can obtain on irs.gov. There are specific instructions on how to fill out this form, which I'll be happy to provide the details on if any of you have that specific question. So based on these economic impact payments, does anybody have any questions thus far?
So far, we don't have any questions.
All right, let's keep going.
Oh, actually, can you repeat the number again that you mentioned, the phone number?
Absolutely. Let's go back up. It is 1-800-919-9835. Okay, anything else?
That's it.
All right, great. So let's move on to the Economic Injury Disaster Fund, also known as EIDL. New funds are available for the economic injury disaster loans. But these funds are for businesses that have not yet applied. This is a loan that is not forgivable, but it is available for a term of 30 years at a 3.75% interest rate. Payments are deferred for 1 year after funding. However, interest accrues during this time. You can apply for this loan by going to sba.gov. It is a simple application process. You'll need to know your gross sales, your cost of goods sold for 2019. Loan amounts are typically granted for 6 months worth of operating expenses as determined by SBA. Loan approval is based on the ability to repay, also determined by SBA. If you apply or have already applied and received a denial, you can call the SBA and request a reconsideration. And that will open up discussion that could possibly lead to approval. If you heard about the new EIDL advances being available, well, this is only for businesses in designated low-income regions. And sorry, this doesn't apply to Lake County, which I guess is also a good thing. If you've already received an EIDL advance with or without a loan, this is a grant. It is not required to be repaid. So that's good news there. Anybody, any other questions up to this point? Look for my water, I don't know what I did with it.
So far, we don't have any other questions.
All right, well, let's go what most people are waiting for, the Paycheck Protection Program, also known as PPP. PPP Draw 1 is for businesses that have not yet applied for PPP and have 500 employees or less. Now, PPP Draw 2 is for businesses that have 300 employees or less and that has previously received a first draw. The PPP loan, first draw PPP loan, and I'm just sorry, I'm messing this part up. That's previously received the first draw PPP loan and will or has used the full amount for authorized uses, of course. If you will be required to repay any of your PPP loan, you do not qualify for this round. So that's kind of out, sorry. But who does qualify for this? Well, again, businesses that have less than 300 employees and can demonstrate at least a 25% reduction in gross receipts between comparable quarters in 2019 and 2020. You can also use your total annual gross receipts in 2020 compared to 2019. So to get this for round 1 or 2, you just go to any banking institution offering PPP loans or an alternative lender. But I recommend going to a bank you already have a relationship with. The documents required for both rounds depend on the structure of your business. So sole proprietors or single member LLCs will use Schedule C from their individual tax returns. Partnerships will use their K-1 from your 1065 return. S corporations will use their payroll reports quarterly or annually. Now, for S corporation owner wages to be included, you must be on payroll, which is something that all S corporation owners should be doing anyways, and we'll talk more about that later. Corporations, of course, will use payroll reports. For round 2, applicants will need proof of a 25% decline when applying for forgiveness, and you can use your profit and loss statement or your annual tax returns. faith-based organizations. For a nonprofit 501c3 organization, a 501c19 veterans organization, an eligible nonprofit news organization, an eligible 501c6 like such organizations such as a chamber, or an eligible designated marketing organization, gross receipts means amounts received by an organization during its annual accounting period of all sources. So that's low, but we can go back to it if we need to. To determine on a faith-based organization, to determine your gross receipts, you can use your quarterly financial statements. And if they are not audited, you must sign and date the first page of the financial statement and initial all other pages attesting to their accuracy. And if they don't identify, you need to mark off if you have to identify any line items. You can use your quarterly or monthly bank statements showing deposits from relevant quarters. You must again note if it's not clear. Or the annual IRS tax filings, and some of them that's going to be required. How do you calculate your loan? Is if you, it's your annual payroll for 2019 or 2020, whichever is higher, divided by 12 to get an average monthly payroll, and then multiply that by 2.5. Now, restaurants and accommodation businesses use a 3.5 calculation. PPP deadline is March 31st, 2021. Keep that in mind because that's it, unless another law comes out. All right, eligible expenses for PPP funds. Well, obviously payroll, which consists of wages, commissions, tips, medical and sick leave, employee benefits, health insurance premiums and retirements, and now include employer-provided group, life, disability, dental, and vision insurance. That's really good. Of course, rent or mortgage interest, utilities, and now new expenses included worker protection costs, payments to suppliers or vendors for essential goods, operational expenses, and property damages incurred during social unrest. Now, even though they added all these more eligible expenses, 60% of your PPP loan must still be used on payroll cost. PPP, payroll, got it? 60%. Remember, in order to have your PPP loan 100% forgiven, you have to use 100% of the funds. Now, you could choose an 8-week or a 24-week to fully exhaust your funds. One of the most exciting and helpful changes made to the PPP loan forgiveness is that the approved expenses that were paid with PPP funds are now fully tax deductible. I am so happy to finally say that because I was so worried for so many of my clients because it was very exciting. Another very exciting and helpful change is that if you received an EIDL advance, it will no longer be deducted from your PPP forgiveness amount. Woo, can I get a hallelujah? We've got some savings in there for us. Little thing is how to get your loan forgiven. You'll need to follow the instructions given to you by the lender that you received your PPP funds from. Most lenders are using portals or online applications by sending you a link to complete your application. And a few banks are using paper applications. For loans under $150,000, the new law has simplified the application forgiveness, thankfully. Made our lives a little bit easier. Okay, now that I just spewed all that out, I know there's some questions out there somewhere, so shoot away.
So the first question is, I'm still waiting for my bank to allow me to apply for PPP forgiveness. Is this common, or have I perhaps missed something?
So most of the banks were holding PPP forgiveness because of waiting for this new legislation to come out, because they were fairly certain that the process would be simplified. So yes, to answer your question, it is completely normal. And in fact, the latest application has been out for less than a week. So just be patient, because the deadline to apply for forgiveness is nowhere near us yet. So you have plenty of time to apply for forgiveness. And those that have held out this far are actually, going to have an easier application to fill out. So it was to your benefit that the banks held off, also to their benefit, because it's less to process for them, because it's simplified. So just be patient, and yes, it's completely normal.
And then the next question, how does a self-employed business with no employees prove the funds were used properly?
What kind of business? You have to say if you are a corporation or.
Well, is it just a single member LLC, I'm assuming?
Yeah, because some businesses aren't required to show payroll.
So as long as, I think it's as long as you're,
Denise, you're muted.
We good? Can you hear us?
Yep.
Okay.
That was weird.
They clarified and said sole proprietor.
Okay.
Schedule C.
Yeah, so your Schedule C, so as long as you've used, you received the calculation was correct and you used what you should have used it on, you should be fine.
Right. It's your net profit on your Schedule C is your, what they call payroll.
Right.
So you don't have to have any payroll reports if you're sole proprietor.
And as long as you use the funds as you should have, which is yourself. Okay.
Those were the only questions we had so far.
Okay. Then let's move right along. Screen. Okay. Paycheck protection. I'm gonna let's see. I lost my spot too. So as long as everyone has any questions on the gross receipts too, I can give you over some, what constitutes gross receipts to get the second round. I can talk about that as well. So here's another really interesting one, the employee retention tax credit that came, this was been out, they revised it a bit too. So this credit is only for businesses with employees. As corporation owners who have over 50% ownership and family member wages are excluded, unfortunately. The employee retention tax credit has not been fully utilized because businesses had to choose between the PPP funds alone and this credit. Now businesses can take advantage of both programs. So there's more to come on how these two programs can work together. So hold up on that, but it's great to know that they allowed it to be used for both ways now. Now, the purpose of this credit is to keep people employed through the pandemic and to help employers who retain employees. Well, who qualifies in 2020 rules, businesses with 500 or fewer employees who paid employees during a complete or partial shutdown of operation for government order, businesses with 100 or less who had 50% or more drop in gross receipts in any quarter of 2020 compared to the same quarter in 2019. Our 2021 rules, also businesses with 500 or fewer employees who paid employees during a complete or partial shutdown of operations by government order, businesses with 500 or less who had a 20% or more drop in gross receipts in any quarter of 2021 compared to 2019. You could also use a preceding quarter to qualify, and we can discuss that in questions if you want more information on that as well. Now, for 2020, you qualify for this credit if your first quarter that your gross receipts drop by 50%, and the credit will end on the quarter that your gross receipts increase to 20% drop in the quarter. And that's a lot of information. For 2021, quarter 1 and quarter 2, you qualify each quarter that your gross receipts drop at least 20%. This might be confusing, so we can further again discuss during Q&A because there's a lot with this retention credit. Some nonprofits also qualify, this is new, if you've been partially or fully shut down in 2020 or 2021. So that's good for your nonprofits. Now, employers claiming the work opportunity tax credit or other CARES Act credits for the same period cannot use this credit, and you cannot use it for the same wages that are included in your PPP forgiveness. We need further guidance from the SBA or the IRS on how to make this election, but we could expect that they will address this in an update. If this is confusing, think about it this way. You can't double dip. We will briefly discuss this when we get the how to get the credit. Now, this credit is a refundable tax credit applied to an employer's payroll tax liabilities, which are reported quarterly, essentially for 2020 wages from March 12th to December 31st. The credit is up to 50% of qualified wages of up to $10,000 per employee. For wages in 2021 up until June 30th, the credit is up to 70% of qualifying wages of up to $10,000 per employee per quarter. So that's a nice little new update too. Now, how to claim this credit? This credit can only be claimed on your 941 or an IRS Form 7200. Because this credit is retroactive back to March 12th, an amended 941 will be necessary. And if you received or expect to receive PPP forgiveness, then you can elect to exclude those wages that were used for PPP forgiveness from the wages used for this credit. If you have not yet applied for PPP forgiveness, there are some strategies you can use to maximize your potential to use these stimulus funds. This credit is available through June 30th of 2021. Okay, now that was a lot of information. Do we have any questions on this as well? Or anything else that I've talked about that you might have just remembered or want to talk about?
So far, I don't have anything in there. Just give it a minute, see if anyone's gonna pop
Okay,
up.
so I want to mention that this employee retention credit has kind of been the redheaded stepchild of the stimulus package for businesses. It's like Denise said, really couldn't be used before with PPP, but now that it can, this is really an exciting part of the new law. And it's a little overwhelming because it's payroll taxes and the qualifications are very detailed, but it is something that you should really consider looking into because you can potentially get some good amount of money from this if you are paying employees. So I encourage you to absorb this information on the ERTC and talk to Denise, or if you already have another CPA, to talk to them about it because it is very exciting.
Yeah, especially if you've been hurt by any of this, these credits are there to help you. So try to utilize everything you possibly can if you are able to. No other questions?
No other questions.
This is good. Well, then we will move on to what I want to talk about with S corporations, because with these PPP, I've seen this a lot, and I want to make sure that people understand how to really treat S corporations. So even if you're an LLC and you elect to be treated as an S corporation, you're following the tax code of an S corporation. Therefore, this relates to you as well. So an S corporation is a pass-through entity. Therefore, shareholders of an S corporation are taxed on their allocated share of the business profits, whether or not those profits were actually distributed to you. In addition, a shareholder of an S corporation is not taxed on any of those distributions or dividends or draws, whatever you want to call that, that you take from the business, so long as those distributions do not exceed your cost basis in the S corporation. A shareholder's cost basis in an S corporation is increased by your share of the business's income or any contributions you make to the business. It is decreased by your share of the business losses and by distributions received from the business. The catch, the Internal Revenue Code established that an officer of an S corporation is an employee of that corporation under federal tax purposes. The S corporations should not attempt to avoid paying the FICA taxes by treating their officers' compensation as distributions rather than wages. Therefore, each shareholder employee must take reasonable compensation in the form of W-2 wages in exchange for services performed for the corporation. And of course, there are no specific guidelines in the code that talk about what or define what reasonable compensation is. Therefore, we have to look at what courts have talked about, and the various courts, what they've ruled on, and what they base their determination on. In each facts and circumstances in each individual cases. I've given you here, I'm going to tell you some of the facts that courts have considered when determining reasonable compensation. The officer's training and experience, the officer's duties and responsibilities, the time and effort that the officer devotes to the business, the corporation's dividend history, the corporation's payments to non-shareholder employees, the timing and manner of the bonuses paid to key people of the corporation, the payments that comparable businesses have made for similar services, the corporation's compensation agreements, and the formula that similar corporations have used to determine compensations. So basically, as a pass-through entity, S corporations distribute their earnings through the payment of dividends to shareholders, which are only taxed at the shareholder level. So basically, like I said, the income is passed to you personally, and you'll pay tax at your individual tax rate, whether that's 10, 12, 22, 24, or even 37. Let's see, where was it? Once that income is earned, that's why I said then whether it's reinvested, whether you keep it or not, you're still taxed at that profit. Now, it is very important that you as an S corporation owner put yourself on payroll to avoid the IRS coming after you for failure to pay FICA taxes. That's your Social Security and Medicare taxes. If this occurs, the distribution you took, dividend or draw, again, whatever name you want to call it, will be classified as self-employment income, and they will assess self-employment taxes plus any interest or penalties for this occurrence. And when the IRS comes after you, it could be 3 years from now, and that could be a hefty, hefty fine. And now, since I did mention audits, you should be aware that the IRS announced last year prior to COVID, and then again, once they reopened, especially after spending all this money, and then again, recently, they announced that they plan to increase the number of audits by 50% on small businesses. I see that there's a few questions, so I could stop here and see what we've got an answer if I haven't answered already or gone over some things.
So the main question is, can someone schedule an appointment with you to go over their individual business and see how those options would work for them?
Absolutely. Yes.
So you can call us at 407-559-1047, and you can make an appointment with us.
That was the only question that was in there.
Okay. I thought I saw something popping up. Okay. So I'll just go over some little, you can split that over. Other things like do not commingle funds. This is another concern I have for small businesses, is that they do commingle their personal and business funds. And, you really should have separate business bank accounts that which you see is all your business income, and your only business expenses are paid out of it. So when you need money from the business, it is either taken through payroll, depending on this business structure, or draws. Do not use your business account to pay for personal expenses directly. Not only will the IRS have an issue with this, lawyers seem to love it because if you have a lawsuit for any reason, you've got this limited liability protection, either LLC or by a corporation. Well, if you just commingled your funds, you just did what's called pierce the corporate veil, which means now your personal assets are endangered because they could come after that as well. I don't know if there's anything else that people would like to discuss. You can switch sides if you want to, but if, like the startups, if there's any questions you have now, or if you want to talk about it, just go to the we're more than here to help you to ask about any questions that we have, all this information that we just threw at you. And anything else you may have questions that I didn't bring up that you would like to talk about.
Can you go over common mistakes that happen when people start their own business?
Commingling funds is one of them. Not setting up the structure properly. I just, sometimes I see where, they set it up on Sunbiz, they set it up that way, one way, and then they go to get the EIN with the IRS and they set it up a different way. So that they might be trying to be a single member LLC and they just made themselves a partnership. That's one thing that when they start off, but again, it's really the commingling of funds. If you do set yourself up on an S corporation, make sure you start on payroll right away. Keep your receipts, because like, again, I mentioned how they're going to start audits. Who knows what small businesses, and they can audit you for 3 years from the date you file your return, April 15th, or the date you filed your return. So they're very behind right now. So expect, they won't audit 2019 until like 2 years from now. So you're keeping your detailed records, documentations of what you're doing. Don't just estimate your numbers, actually add up your true expenses. And that's why we offer bookkeeping services here, because we've seen a lot of things that people do wrong and they need a little assistance, and we're always here to help for that too.
Also, I think that businesses start up, there's so much that they're trying to ramp up with marketing or getting all of their inventory and maybe getting into a space, maybe not, but they're not thinking about their bookkeeping. Whether you do it yourself or have a professional do it for you, doing bookkeeping from the very beginning is so important, because you need to be looking at your finances every month to make business decisions. I see a lot of businesses who have no idea if they're profiting or losing money from month to month. And by the end of the year, had they known that, they would have made different decisions. So that's also another thing. There are some that can and prefer to do it themselves, and that's fantastic. Or have a professional. But either way, please look at your finances and where you're at on a month-to-month basis.
Any other questions?
So let's say someone's getting ready to start their business and they're going to come sit down with you and try and get everything set up. What should they expect from that first appointment with you, and what should they bring with them for that first appointment?
So they're setting up for the first time. Is that what you said? Well, it will be briefly like, what are you looking to do? We're going to we need to know the name, make sure it's available through the state of Florida. We'll apply for your EIN, and I'll pretty much, I would say, make a list of questions that you have for me. There's probably a million things that you go through your head when you're starting this, and it's one of the best things to do is just like list all the questions to know, so that as you're starting to get prepared, what questions might you have, or you want to start a business, what's involved, what do you need, and then we could discuss it. And then of course one question generates another question usually. But to start an opening, it's basically, if it's going to be a LLC, what type of structure do you want to be? Just a single member LLC? Is there 2 people? What if it's going to be more like a partnership, or did you want to do it as an S corporation and follow the rules of an S corporation instead? And if it's a partnership, you want type of an agreement. So we need to know, are you sharing profits equally, profit losses? And so there's a little bit rules in that way, as well as creating operation agreements. Anything else?
We currently don't have any other questions sitting there. If you guys do have questions, you can put it either in the question and answer feature, or you can throw it in the chat for Denise.
So I'll just mention, I know that a lot of our clients have been antsy to get their PPP forgiveness submitted. And we finally come to the point where we've been saying, wait. And now is finally a good time to go ahead and apply for that forgiveness. Like I said before, there are some strategies that you can apply in submitting that forgiveness, so where you can take full advantage of the ERTC credit as well. So if you're interested in any of those strategies, feel free to give us a call because there's a certain way that you want to claim the PPP expenses in order to do that. And then I would just say again to encourage you to take a look at that ERTC credit if you have employees, and don't just avoid it because it's complicated.
It is a complicated credit, but it's worth it if you can take it, again, because it does give you a refund based on your tax liabilities if you paid too much. And you, especially if you were shut down or experienced a hardship during this time.
Our next question is, I am an S Corp. When paying quarterly, can I pay from the business account?
Yes, because if you're an S corporation, you should be on payroll and wages. So yes, you're paying from the business account because part of those taxes that you're paying, 7.65% of FICA taxes is an expense. The others come from your paycheck. So that payroll liability that you pay covers your federal withholding, the employer and the employee share of FICA taxes. So absolutely should come from that. Then of course you have unemployment taxes, which are expensed. I would like to say something also, just to give you guys a possible warning. I brought this up in one of my blogs that I had written about. All this unemployment has gone out, not just state-wise, but federally. And as business owners, I want you to I'm just predicting that this may occur, and I want you to be ready, because this happened back in when we had the recession, all the unemployment. The state changed the rates. So all of a sudden businesses had to pay more into federal, into unemployment. And I expect the state and maybe even federal to do that. Right now, each business owner pays a percentage, whatever your percentage rate is, on the first $7,000 that you pay the employee. The rate that year increased from $7,000 to $8,000, and some people are like, oh, it's only $20 per employee. Well, if you have 100 employees, that's $2,000 that's out of your budget. So I haven't heard anything, but I just want to put it out there. Be prepared, because I do expect, in order to refund all this, the unemployment, that the state may do it again by increasing it to 7,000 to 8,000 or more. And I think that, I don't know if the federal will do the same, but I just want to throw it out there for you guys to be, if I hear anything, you'll know. Okay.
I'm not seeing any other questions right now. Is there, I was just going to ask for your contact information. So if people do have any questions after, so you can go ahead and contact Denise that way. And as we mentioned at the beginning of this webinar, we will have this available on our website. It will also go in our newsletter, and we will have the PowerPoint presentation as well to go along with this. So if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to Denise, and she will be more than happy to answer those. So last call for questions real quick.
I know there's a lot of information, but I hope I didn't confuse anybody further. I hope you got a lot of questions answered that you might have had and that didn't need to ask us. So
thank you for attending.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for giving this webinar. Denise is also going to be our sponsor for the next 2 First Fridays. We are hosting it next Friday over at Claremont Brewing Company, and she always has fun tax tips to share before those networking sessions as well. So thank you, everyone. If you have any questions regarding the webinar, feel free to reach out to either myself or to Denise, and I hope you guys have a wonderful week. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.